Good evening to everybody. So it is really exciting for me to give the first talk, student talk, basically in the permanent campus of IISER BPR history. Previously, Harish Bhai had spoken as an alumni, but as a student, nobody has spoken before us. This institute will go on for ages, and the first student talk, you are all attending. That's a great thing. So basically, why am I giving this talk? Recently, in the month of, I will give a brief intro like how I chose this topic. Recently, 2 months ago, there was a essay writing competition going on from DAE, Department of Atomic Energy, BART. So I had written an article of about 3,000 words, and 1,500 students have participated in that, and 30 students were selected to go to Bombay to do the oral presentation at the headquarters, which is the old Diaz Club in Bombay, just beside the Gateway of India. So I went there, I got the third prize. The judges appreciated my scheme of things, and so I thought that let's start a scientific temperament in the permanent campus, because from the morning there are classes, we come to eat in the mess and we go back to study. This is not what an IISER should really look like. In IISER there are talks going on every day, not one, more than one. So I thought of starting this, and I would encourage all of you to come forward to give talks like this so that all of us can benefit from this and learn something new in the world of science. So today my talk will be based upon nuclear physics from a societal perspective. We all know the nuclear physics, the term nuclear physics, the phrase nuclear physics is basically something which reminds us back to the Hiroshima-Nagasaki atom bombing that the US did on the Japanese. And the second thing that comes to our mind when we think about nuclear physics is nuclear power. So I have basically portrayed these two things. So this is a destructive approach. This is a destructive thing which we all know about, which is very dangerous and which took a lot of lives and till today scares a lot of people. And this again is something many countries have been trying to go into that so that they can generate power at a large scale from a small amount of mass or something like that. But today I will not speak about any of them. I will speak about how nuclear physics affects the society. What are the societal applications of nuclear physics? And basically it will generally contain the medicinal applications of nuclear physics. There are many parts, like I chose the biological nuclear physics part, so I will mainly focus on that, and then I will also share some of the things that I saw in BART, the very things, and I have to speak upon those things. So I would like to start from the famous quote of Albert Einstein that the release of atomic energy has not created a new problem, it has just merely made more urgent the necessity of solving an existing one. We all know that how in the scientific community in that particular era, Albert Einstein was told that why did he introduce that famous equation, or why did he introduce the concepts of nuclear physics, and because of that only the Hiroshima-Nagasaki bombing took place. So his counter argument to that was this thing, but that was not realized back then. It was realized 50 to 60 years later that how these things can work, and so today I will speak upon that. So in India, the pioneer man who started the nuclear physics program in India was Homi Jahangir Bhabha. So India was one of the first countries to set up its own atomic energy commission, and all the Department of Atomic Energy's primary focus or aim was nuclear security. That we all might have, many of people might have seen Rocket Boys, and there we have seen how Bhabha and Nehru talk about that we should create a nuclear bomb so that the other countries are afraid of us. And here we also see that we don't have so let me tell you something. Many of you might be knowing that we don't have uranium deposits in the country, and uranium is the material which is easily fissile and fertile also. There are two types of uranium. One is fertile uranium, one is fissile uranium. Both the fertile uranium and the fissile uranium can be converted into a particular form so that they come into uranium-235 and then break off to a series of chain reactions. Why are these important? When we break off the uranium, it follows a particular chain reaction in nuclear fission reaction, and thereby you get particles such as alpha particle, beta particle and gamma particle. We have heard about, and also neutrons sometimes. We have heard about this alpha, beta and gamma. So today's basic talk will include this alpha, beta and gamma, nothing more. This alpha, beta and gamma will be used to show many applications. And there's a famous guy in Stanford University, I don't remember exactly, The discovery of the delve on the microscopic world is like opening a gold mine of new series of fast-breaking areas of interdisciplinary science and research. So, what are radioisotopes? We all know what are isotopes. Isotopes like same atomic number, different molecular number. So, what are radioisotopes? Radioisotopes are the unstable isotope of a chemical element. They are not the stable isotope of chemical element. They are the unstable isotope of chemical element. What is the advantage of unstable isotope? Every matter particle in this particular universe tries to attain stability. Whether it is the particles like we see around us, anything, or suppose for us also, we are also an element of nature. So we also try to attain stability. So stability is a key concern for any matter in the universe. These radioisotopes, being unstable, emit radioactive particles in pursuit of getting stabilized and emit radiations like alpha, beta, gamma and neutron radiation. In general, the radioisotopes can be created by two techniques. One is the direct fission products of the decay processes of uranium-235, and another is the neutron absorption technique. So recently, the BARC has introduced two new medical radioisotopes, the technetium-99m and gallium-68, which have made great breakthrough in the field of medicinal or radiological physics. So now I will speak about the medicinal application. In any medicinal application, there are two parts. One is the diagnostic part and another is the therapeutic part. So, yeah. So before going on to the actual techniques, we will see what is computed tomography. We have all heard CT scans. So what is CT scan? Because this will be required in the next slide. So the term computed tomography or CT refers to the computerized imaging procedure in which narrow beams of radiation is aimed at a patient and quickly rotated around their body, producing signals that are processed by the machine's computer to generate cross-sectional images or slides. These slices are called tomographic images and can give a clinician more detailed information than a conventional method. Once a number of successive slices are collected by the machine's computer, they can be digitally stacked together to form a three-dimensional image of the patient that allows for easier identification of basic structures as well as possible tumors or abnormalities. So, when I was searching for this computed tomography, everywhere in the internet I could see that this radiation, only X-ray was written. Only X-ray was written. But nowhere any other kind of radiations was seen, like positron or single photon emission tomography. Why? Because these procedures are relatively so new. In India, they are very extremely new. We have not heard about PET scans or SPECT scans as we have heard about angiograms or other techniques. So the first technique, this image looks like a CT scan but is little different. So what happens in a PET scan? PET scan generally refers to positron emission tomography. Positron is the antiparticle of an electron with the opposite charge to that of an electron but the same mass. How does a PET scanner work? So basically when we go to a X-ray imaging technique facility, what happens? Externally radiations are given to our body and then they are collected from our collector. Here in the back a camera is fitted and then the image is collected in the back, or similarly from the back radiation is given, in the front the camera is placed and then we collect the image. But in these techniques, what is the advantage is that externally radiations are not emitted. What happens? We inject a radiopharmaceutical or radiotracer is injected into the patient's body. What happens? First we go to the clinical center, a radiopharmaceutical or radiotracer is injected into our body and that mixes up in the whole blood and then it emits certain kind of radiation into the blood, and when they emit the radiation, those radiation from inside our body go to the outside and are detected by the Geiger-Müller counters or the gamma cameras that are present around, and then they give a image. So it is just the opposite scenario to what happens in a general X-ray. So here the radiopharmaceutical or radiotracer injected is fluorine-18. Fluorine-18 is a famous radioisotope because it is known for emitting positron. Inside the body, positron gets emitted. Positron gets emitted and this positron reacts with the free electrons present in the blood, thus giving out two gamma radiations at a 180-degree angle to one another. These gamma radiations are now captured by the Geiger-Müller counters present and thus the process of tomography takes place. particle of the radio tracer, which is first injected into the patient's body. So what is this? This is fluorine 18. What does this fluorine 18 emit? This emits a positron. Positron means E plus. So inside the human body there are a lot of free electrons that are already present in the bloodstream. In the bloodstream there are already a lot of free electrons. So what happens is positron interact with the free electrons present in the body to give out gamma radiation. And gamma radiation, as we know, are very penetrating in nature and have a huge amount of energy present in them. These gamma radiations are emitted from the body to the outside. Gamma radiation, only gamma radiation. These are then detected by the gamma camera from the diagonal transfer which are present outside, and thus giving a picture of the internal part of our body. So what does a PET scan generally do? PET scans are basically nuclear medicine procedures that measure the metabolic changes taking place in the body, thus helping us analyze the different biochemical changes taking place inside our body. So we can already understand that at a particular time toward which the PET scan is taking place, we can actually understand that what biochemical changes are taking place inside the patient's body, right? Which is far more superior to any of the conventional techniques that we are already doing. So this is a great application of medicinal nuclear physics. So similar to the PET scan is another type of technique used, which is known as the SPECT scan. So what happens in a SPECT scan? SPECT scan, basic principle remains the same, but in SPECT scan it is known as single photon emission computed tomography. So in SPECT scans, technetium 99M radio tracers or radiopharmaceuticals are injected inside the patient's body, and then these mix with the blood, giving out gamma radiation. So these do not require any positron electron emission. And by the way, I forgot to tell one thing: this positron and electron interaction is known as Raman scattering. How is it beneficial or useful? Basically, SPECT scans help us show that how blood flows to the different parts of the body. Why are these nuclear medicinal techniques superior than the conventional ones? I will tell this by a story. So there was a story that I read of an American footballer. So he generally goes for a routine check. He considers himself very fit. He goes for routine check, and there he performs an angiogram. In angiogram, what we see? Angiogram is an invasive process. But another advantage, these things are not invasive by any way. It is just requiring injection and not invasive. Angiogram require, like, we have to inject a complete material into the places that is dangerous also. So he went for an angiogram test, and the doctors told him that you have a thin narrowing in the doctor told him that in your heart artery, the blood vessels, there is a thin narrowing like this. So basically he was suggested to do a bypass surgery, but he was not satisfied. Why? Because he is telling that, why will I do so? I have no problems at all. I am so fit. I work out every day. Why should I do so? Then in USA, the doctor suggested him that do a SPECT scan. In a SPECT, how this SPECT scan helped him is that, try to understand. Angiogram gives the anatomical viewpoint of the internal lining of the heart, arteries and blood vessels. That it is narrow or thin, but genetically and hereditarily speaking, there are a few people in the world who, in spite of having these narrow arteries or blood vessels, don't have any problem in their regular life. But this SPECT scan shows not the anatomical approach, it shows that how blood is flowing. Is it having any difficulty in flowing? That is the physiological viewpoint, not the anatomical viewpoint. So SPECT scans are a lot superior than the common techniques of angiogram. Is it clear? If anyone is not clear, please let me know so that I can explain, because this is difficult for me also to understand the first place. So they generally give a physiological viewpoint rather than just giving an anatomical viewpoint. Angiogram versus SPECT scans. So, like, another question that I faced out that people ask the scientists in bar, when are we going to see these SPECT scans and PET scans massively in India? So why are we not seeing them in India till now? Basically, first and common answer will be it takes time, 15 to 15 years from US to India. Another basic thing is they are expensive. Another basic thing is like for these a lot of strict protocols are required. And in India, in a country of 30 million or 1 million people, it is very difficult to like maintain that strict protocol in the small health community centers so that there is no leak of radiation. Because these radio tracers come in small boxes and if they are not handled properly, if they emit radio tracers in the complete environment, then it will cause a huge problem. And there are a lot of safety issues as well. Like when a patient goes for inside a chamber, it has to be completely sealed from outside. The toilet that you would be using will also have to be like they also have to be specialized so that because if he is urinating, then he or she is urinating, then that particular thing also has to go into some kind of treatment. So these things in India will take a little more amount of time, but we can be optimistic of having them in the next 5 to 10 years. Yeah. So another technique is brain imaging, neuroradiology. So we are all talking this about the diagnostic thing. We have not yet come to the therapeutic approach. So brain imaging. Neuroradiology is a subspecialty of diagnostic radiology, which focuses on diagnosing abnormalities of head, brain, spine and neck using a range of neuroimaging techniques. Now, as we have understood, the PET and the SPECT scan basic mechanism remains the same. We inject a radio tracer that goes over to the different parts of the body and then like everything goes on like the same thing. A little bit of technical changes and tweaks, but the same thing goes on. Neuroradiologists interpret as neuroimages of the brain, spine and spinal cord, face and neck and peripheral nervous system to diagnose strokes, tumor, genetic conditions, Addison's, Alzheimer's disease and many other neurological conditions as well. Heart imaging. But at the same time, take it with a pinch of salt that this brain imaging technique by nuclear physics is not that useful. Why? Like we should be using electronics techniques because that is more useful. So like I shouldn't tell this in a talk because it's a nuclear physics oriented, but still. Heart imaging. This is useful. Radionuclide imaging, a tiny amount of radionuclide called tracer is injected into the vein. The tracer emits gamma rays that are detected by the gamma camera. Same thing. The coronary arteries are narrowed. Radionuclide imaging is used to learn how or if the narrowing is affecting the heart blood supply or not. See this, how or if. This is important. That if the narrowing is affecting the blood supply to the heart or not. It might not affect the blood supply because of genetic and nuclear conditions. The next thing is PRRT, peptide receptor radionuclide therapy. So basically we use two very important biological concepts to one is the peptide receptor concept and the second one I will talk about the immunology. How immunology is used to like we have already completed the diagnostic part out here. They are now moving on to the therapeutic part. PRRT is generally used for neuroendocrine tumor. The key advantage of PRRT over other methods of radiotherapy is the precise delivery of the radionuclide to the tumor site. See, basically treatment of any disease like cancer requires only one thing, that is precise targeting. Why cancer patients don't live long by chemotherapy in many cases? That is because precise targeting is not available. If this cell is affected, this is the affected cell and there are many other cells out there, when we inject the chemotherapy, then many neighboring cells also get affected. So we see a lot of other kinds of like side effects which come into the cancer patients. So nuclear physics is one such. These processes in nuclear physics can help us or aid us to like solve many problems. The key advantage of PRRT, the precise delivery of the radionuclide to tumor cell. Now I will tell how this works. Basically, there are some tumors have an abundance of overexpression of peptide receptors compared to the normal tissue. Cancerous cells have an overexpression. What is the overexpression like? These are the cancerous cells and these are the normal cells. Like a peptide is coming, this is a peptide. This peptide, a particular peptide will be chosen. That peptide will have an overexpression. What is the overexpression? Overexpression means that it will have a more affinity to go and bind to the cancerous cell, not the neighboring cell. So this technique is used out here. And here, this peptide is conjugated with the radionuclide. So So what happens? As the peptide goes on to the cancerous cell, and enter the cancerous cell, the radio tracer automatically precisely gets targeted to the cancerous cell, not invading the nearby cells. Next technique is radioimmunotherapy. Again the same thing. How we can make it more precise? Here another concept, like concept of immunology is used. Radioimmunotherapy is the personalized cancer treatment that combines radiation therapy with the precise targeting ability of immunotherapy. In radioimmunotherapy, a monoclonal antibody is paired with a radio tracer. Here a peptide was paired with a radio tracer. Here a monoclonal antibody will be paired with a radio tracer, which is injected into the patient's bloodstream. The antibody travels to and binds the cancerous cell, allowing a high dose of radiation precisely to the tumor. So again, same thing, the monoclonal antibody will be paired with the radio tracer, and that monoclonal antibody will try to go and bind to the cancerous cell only and not the normal cell, so that precise targeting can be done. So now we have another technique, teletherapy, brachytherapy and blood irradiation. Let me tell that in India right now there are a lot of teletherapy machines available. Like the patients who go to the extreme stages of their cancer, chemotherapy doesn't work for them, so radiotherapy has to be given, and that is considered as a dangerous stage. So we have basically see everywhere that we have heard now that nuclear physics, radiation, radiology, this instills some fear in our mind, but that is not the actual thing. We have seen that how precise this PRRT and RIT can be done. So why don't we use these things? Because these things have to be made in a personalized fashion, like every individual X or for every individual Y. Different radio tracers have to be made with respect to their genetic and hereditary condition. So that will involve a lot of science, and like a doctor has to make 50 different kinds of radio tracers for 50 patients in India. So that is like till today it has not been that feasible for the common people to afford. But what is a teletherapy or Hubbard? Here, over 60 radioactive material is used for the treatment of tumors or cancerous cells from an external beam of gamma radiation, where the radiation is provided to a linear accelerator. So we can understand that this is not that superior method. But recently, Bhark has made a machine which is named Hubbard. They are telling that that has the ability to do precise targeting, and that name is Hubbard. They have recently, like 19 or 20, they have manufactured it and they are selling all over India. So it is again an external thing, like externally beams will come and hit the patient's body, but there is obviously some losses because of that, because it will hit the normal cells as well, not only the cancer cells.
Will it be damaging the other cells also?
Yeah, it will be damaging. So I am telling this is not that like PRRT and radioimmunotherapy are more advanced techniques than teletherapy.
The reliability is not that established according to
This is a old technique. Teletherapy is a old technique. Brachytherapy. Here the radioactive sources are placed inside a patient to kill cancer cells and shrink tumors. This again is a good one, because again the radioactive tracer is injected into the patient's body, and then like they go to the particular site and shrink the tumors. This allows the doctor to use a high total dose of radiation to treat a smaller area and avoid delivering radiation to the surrounding organs. Next, actually this brachytherapy, I would like to explain in my slide that has a little bit anomaly. This brachytherapy includes these two, PRRT and radioimmunotherapy, and teletherapy is a separate thing. Externally, brachytherapy, internally, PRRT and RIT. Blood irradiation. Blood has to be sometimes irradiated, which has been treated with radiation to prevent transfusion-associated graft versus host disease. So this is a particular disease, transfusion-associated graft versus host disease. Irradiation of blood prevents lymphocytes dividing and causing harm. So let's take a break of 5 minutes.